In 2018, I used to sell drugs to my friends, and that was the most purpose that I had in my life at the time. I was also 125 kilos. And since then I've lost 50 kilos. I've obsessed over fat loss for 7 years, reading books, watching podcasts, and honestly, more articles than you can imagine. The problem that I found was that all the information online isn't actually helpful for someone that wants to lose a considerable amount of weight. And in this video, I want to share with you how you can use physics to bend reality and make fat loss feel effortless. Let's get into it. The first thing that you need to understand is that you have been conditioned to believe, and a belief is basically just a thought repeated multiple times, but believe certain things since you've been grown up, okay? So as you grow up, what happens is our parents, our schools, all the people in our environment, things on the TV, the news, they'll just tell us things, right? They'll say, you need 5 fruits a day. You need to eat breakfast. Orange juice is good. Cereal is good. You need to finish everything on your plate. Busy equals successful. That's what my school used to tell me. Money doesn't grow on trees. We get thrown all these random things that people say, and I don't even think they say it because they actually believe it. They've also been conditioned, and this just gets passed on. But obviously, as we grow up, we're young, we don't really understand the world, and we just take on these thoughts, and then they form how we see the world. Like when you're born, right, you have a pair of glasses, a blank pair of glasses, a blank slate, and you're seeing through the world very clearly. And then every experience that you have, every time that you're told something, every time that someone says something to you, you adopt what they say as part of your own unique worldview. And that's basically a lens going into the glass. And so every time that you have an experience, you're just having another lens going into this glass, another lens going into this glass, and eventually this multiple set of lenses in your glasses forms how you see the world. The problem with this is that we actually have no real control over the way that we see the world and the beliefs that we have, because as we grow up, we just adopt the thoughts of the people that we think are right about things. And so it's very, very important as we grow up and as we get older to start questioning things a little bit more and actually looking inward at our own thought patterns, which I'm going to be touching on in this video, don't worry, so that we actually believe what our beliefs are. Because if we don't, then we can chuck them in the bin like a piece of paper that we don't need. And that means that we can actually live a way more authentic life, rather than just adopting all these beliefs that other people have that have been pushed onto us and living a life that isn't true to ourselves. One of those beliefs is that when we desire to lose weight, we need to take lots of action. And you'll see online, if you go online, there'll be a plethora of fitness influencers that will say, action is good. And they'll say, be disciplined. And I don't even think a lot of these guys have thought about the things that they're saying, because there's something that I want to introduce you to called the swimmer's body illusion, right? And in the swimmer's body illusion, there's a guy and he wants to get into good shape. And so he looks online and he sees bodybuilders and he thinks they're a bit too big. He sees runners and he thinks they're a bit too scrawny, but then he sees Michael Phelps online. He's like, I want to look like that. And so then he starts swimming. He starts swimming every single day. And what happens is he's swimming for 6 months. And he gets out of the pool one day and he looks at his body and he's like, I don't look like Michael Phelps. And he realizes it's an illusion, because swimmers don't look the way that they look because they swim, but they swim because of the way that they look. And this can be extrapolated to so many different sports and even other professions as well. For example, basketball players play basketball because they're tall. They don't get tall because they play basketball. And it's the same with online coaches, right? So an online coach, most of them, 90% of them, will have grown up being quite sporty, quite athletic, good genetics. They start going to the gym. They don't really know what to do with the rest of their life. And then what happens? People say, why don't you become a PT? And they're like, do you know what? It's an easy job to get into, and it is pretty easy to get into. You literally just have to go to the gym and say, look, I want to become a PT, and they'll allow you to work for them and also get your own clients and do the qualification, all of that shit. And so people become PTs. But the thing is with these people, they have always been motivated to exercise. They've always been pretty healthy. They've always been in good shape. And so they don't actually understand how to rewire the brain and go from not liking the gym at all, being pretty lazy, being overweight, to becoming the person that they are, because they've always been that way. And so they just say, all right, take action, be disciplined, go into a calorie deficit, track your calories, and they'll say all of these things. But honestly, I just think that all of these things, without the right mental attitude and the mental rewiring, and it's literally a rewiring of the brain, and I'll explain later how this actually makes sense from a physics perspective, but they don't understand that you can't just tell someone who's overweight to go into a calorie deficit without the explanation of how to change your brain so that you actually enjoy being in a calorie deficit, or you actually enjoy exercising. And it's just like giving someone paracetamol when they have a headache, but the headache is being caused by a bleed in the brain, okay? Like, think about that, right? Like, imagine someone has a bleed in the brain, they go into the GP surgery and the GP's like, oh yeah, have some paracetamol. Like, you're treating the symptom, but you're not actually treating the cause. And the thing is, people get overweight not because they are unaware, but it's because there's some internal state that they're trying to change, and they change it with food, right? As they grow up, and this happened with me, like I was pretty bored, maybe I felt insecure, maybe I felt undervalued, maybe like multiple of different things, like it's a multifaceted issue. But I had these internal feelings and I resorted to food for comfort, right? And so I overate and I became fat, and there's so many people that do the same thing. It could be habitual, it could be because of loneliness, it could develop over time, it could be because of stress. When people get older, they go to work, they're sedentary, they get stressed, what happens? They eat more food. And so overeating happens as a result of something happening in the internal state. And so if you just tell someone to go on a diet and go into a calorie deficit and you don't address the underlying issue, then you're not really solving the problem. The bleed in the brain is still going to be there, right? And so my approach is all about changing the internal state, which allows fat loss and physique development and being healthy to be completely effortless. And a good example of this is, I'm in Bali at the moment and I go to train at this gym called Nirvana Life and Fitness. And in Nirvana Life and Fitness, everyone, or 90% of people, are in like top 1% shape. And what you'll find if you go there is that everyone has a really positive attitude. Everyone's really happy. Everyone seems to be getting along great. If you say hi to someone, someone actually greets you with a smile. There's such a great energy in there, and I'm going to be talking about energy in a minute, but it just goes to show that if your internal state is not in a good place, you're going to need a lot of discipline to get in shape. Whereas if you can get your internal state into a really, really good position, then you don't actually need discipline, because you do all the things that you need to do in order to lose weight and be healthy as a byproduct of feeling good inside. So now we're going to get into the physics of this, because I think if we get a fundamental understanding of what our internal state is made out of, then we can begin to look to change it in the right way. So in the brain, right, you have something called neurons, okay? And these neurons, you actually have them in the body as well, but anyway, we'll talk about that in another video. But in the brain, you have these neurons, right? And whenever you have a thought, these neurons will connect together, some of them. You have billions of them. They do that via an electrical charge, okay? So you have a thought about something, think like 6 neurons in your brain, I don't know if it's 6, but they'll kind of light up. And that's basically what a thought is, right? And sometimes when we have this thought, it will cause a chemical reaction. And the result of this chemical reaction is emotion, okay? So you can think about thoughts is electric, okay? And emotion is chemical. Now, if you did GCSE physics or chemistry, you'll know that a chemical reaction occurs when basically there's a change in the charge of an ion. But basically what you need to know about this is that it's magnetic, right? And what that means is that thought plus emotion is electromagnetic. And I'm going to touch on this point in a minute. But another way to explain this idea is that imagine in your mind there's like billions of keys, like piano keys, keyboard keys. And like when you're playing these keys, the specific notes that you play, the actual notes that you play, those are like the thoughts. And then the sound that comes out is like the chemical reaction happening, and that is the emotion, and that's what we feel, right? And how hard you press the keys is how much you feel the emotion. So you have all these keys, and throughout the day you're pressing different keys, and sometimes if you press it really lightly, there's not much emotion. If you press it really hard, there's a lot of emotion. And the more that we have big emotional responses to our thoughts, the larger the electromagnetic field is created. And this is where we're getting into the physics of it, right? Because if you think about like, you're having all these thoughts throughout the day, some of them cause these emotional responses, and now you can understand that the thoughts and the emotions that you're experiencing throughout the day are literally creating a field around you, an electromagnetic field around you, which is super interesting because then we can begin to understand how that actually impacts the rest of our life and how that actually impacts our weight loss. But the point here is that if you're constantly playing sad notes or negative notes, maybe anxious thoughts, stressed thoughts, thoughts of lack, thoughts of insecurity, thoughts of lack of confidence, then the emotions that you're going to feel as a byproduct of these thoughts are also going to be negative. And that means the electromagnetic field is also going to be in a disorderly fashion, right? Because if your thoughts are not elevated, your emotions are not elevated. If your emotions are not elevated, then the electromagnetic field that corresponds to those thoughts and emotions are also not going to be elevated, right? And this actually is proven, right? So when you have these thoughts and emotions, your brain waves become incoherent when they're negative. And when they're incoherent, this sends signals to the rest of your body down the spinal cord that are not good for the body. And this is how, when done in a compounded way, disease is created. And you can literally manifest disease in your body if you think and you feel emotions that are negative. But essentially, the positive or negativeness of your electromagnetic field determines a lot of things about your life, okay? And so if we can change the electromagnetic field that we are giving off by changing our thoughts and emotions, then we're gonna experience life in a better way. So back in 2021, I decided to take weight loss really seriously. My brother had decided to prepare for a photo shoot. And a photo shoot, if you don't know, is basically an event kind of thing, like a marathon, like a half marathon, and you prepare for like maybe 16 weeks. It's kind of like your own bodybuilding competition, but you just take photos. And so he went pretty disciplined, and at the time, and looking back, I understand now, like I used to compare myself to my brother a lot. I used to have these competitive thoughts. I used to be quite insecure, and I used to think that he was the person that I needed to beat. And this comes probably from my childhood, where he was the older brother. He was always really, really good. Like for example, in GCSEs, he got like stellar grades. He got 10 A stars. I got 9 A stars, and little flex. Nah, I'm kidding. And like, when I got 9 A stars, I didn't think, oh, I've done so well. I just thought to myself like, oh, I didn't do as good as him. Little things like that. Obviously, over a compounded teenagehood, that's gonna have an impact on my thoughts and emotions and my electromagnetic field. And so when I went on this journey in 2021, I started to take weight loss really seriously. But the thoughts that I had really were like, I need to win, or like, I need to lose loads of weight, and I feel unconfident, I feel a sense of lack, I feel a sense of unworthiness, and that was really where the desire was coming from. And so although I was disciplined, the electromagnetic field as a result of the thoughts and emotions that I was having was of negativeness. And so I was operating at this like low frequency. And what you need to understand about frequency is that it's kind of like a radio, right? When you tune in to a low frequency, you're basically just having these thoughts and emotions. They're giving off an electromagnetic field, or they have an electromagnetic field. And because of that frequency, you can't actually choose what's being played, right? You just pick up whatever message is on that frequency, and then you operate at that frequency, and that affects your behavior, your digestion, all of these unconscious things that you don't even realize that are happening. And there's actually really, really new research happening that our cells, the way that they communicate to each other is not actually through like positiveness and negativeness, but it's actually through a chemical called a biophoton, okay? And this is actually just a very, very weak light particle. And so that shows that the electromagnetic fields that we're giving off is going to definitely have a massive impact on the rest of our body, right? Because our cells are literally communicating in that way. And so if I was operating at that low electromagnetic frequency of lack, insecurity, lack of confidence, all these little things, then what that meant was that the unconscious patterns that I was having were also that way, right? Like, for example, even though I would show up to my sessions, maybe I wouldn't give it the full amount. I would get obsessed over the things in my environment, because when you're stressed, you start to focus on the things around you rather than looking inwards. You start to look at the scale, you start to look at calories too much, you start to obsess over going out. I stopped going out with my friends, which probably made me lonely, because I was so obsessed with the weight loss, and I thought that if I ate out, then I wouldn't be on track with my diet. That was literally the thoughts that I was having, okay? And that was as a result of my electromagnetic frequency that I was giving off, right? I was just making all these decisions almost unconsciously. Like, sometimes you don't do things because you have conscious intent. You just feel the desire to do things, right? You just feel compelled to get up and, I don't know, get a glass of water without really realizing why you're asking yourself to do it. And that's like your unconscious at work. And so your behavior is really downstream of your frequency. And this is actually quite an important point. So I'm gonna rub everything off the board and write that in big letters, because I think this is super important. In red as well, let's go with the red. Frequency goes to behavior. And this is actually like in two ways, right? Because you have like all your unconscious behavior, like digestion, maybe like the speed that you eat, maybe like your metabolism, but then also the decisions that you make. If you're in this stress state, as I said, because negative emotions and negative thoughts are correlated with stress, then you're going to be so focused on the present environment that you're not going to be able to look inward to actually change your internal state. And like, if you understand what stress is, this makes complete sense, because stress is a fight or flight response that happens in your body. It's a physiological response that is designed to help you steer off threats in the environment, right? So imagine there's a hunter-gatherer there, there's a lion coming to attack him. That would cause stress, okay? And then that would equip him with the right tools in order to beat the lion and escape or fight it. But we just create stress in our heads because of these negative thoughts and negative emotions. And then as a result of that, we react in the same way to those thoughts as if it was a lion, and we don't even realize this is happening, right? And so, for example, like, I would have these negative thoughts of lack, and then that would cause me to be obsessed with everything in my environment. So it would be the scale, that would be calories, and then that obsession would actually cause me to feel more stressed, and that would lead to more negative emotions. And then it would just be this cycle. And then I would end up basically lowering calories, doing more cardio, taking more action, being more disciplined. And as a result of that, I'd end up burning out. And like, the reason why I say that coaches don't understand any of this, right, is because I had a coach, and I was messaging him at the time. I remember this was 2022, and I was messaging him at the time, and like every few days, I'll be like, oh no, my weight's not going down, like we need to lower calories. He didn't even question where that was coming from. He didn't even say, like, why do you want to lower calories so much? Why do you want to go so fast? Like, he didn't even understand like where that was coming from. He was like, yeah, right, like your body seems fine. Because all these online coaches, they're so focused on the material reality, they don't actually understand what the inner state is like, okay? But the inner state actually unlocks the material reality. It's not the material reality that unlocks the inner state. Everyone will say online, like, if you lose weight, you'll be happy. If you lose weight, you'll feel more confident. But actually, it's not true. Because if you're losing weight from a state of lack, you ain't gonna be successful. Because you're gonna get obsessed, right, with the things that are going around you because of this sense of stress. Then you're gonna get disheartened when the scale doesn't go down. You're gonna obsess over calories, you're not gonna go out, and you're gonna create stress. And then that's gonna go into a binge restrict cycle, which is exactly what happened to me. And I'm like, it's why 95% of dieters who lose weight end up regaining it back. It's simple, right? The data is clear. And so if we truly want to lose weight, it isn't about taking action. It's just about changing our frequency from negative, I'm just gonna do it like the sciencey way, negative to positive. Because once you're operating at a positive frequency, and what I mean by that is you are experiencing elevated emotions. So you're in a place of self-love, gratitude, freedom, happiness, all of these emotions that you don't have to lose weight to feel. Weight loss is gonna feel effortless because you're gonna just do things that you're happy with. Because imagine, right? You can either say to yourself, I am going to be happy after I lose weight, and then get obsessed about it and get stressed about it because you're emotionally dependent on the outcome of losing weight. Or alternatively, you can feel all those emotions of confidence, self-love, gratitude beforehand. Then you're emotionally independent of the outcome. As a result of being emotionally independent of the outcome, because you're already operating at this really high frequency, you don't take any unbalanced action, you don't take any obsessive action. And so you just kind of glide through it effortlessly, you don't do anything too unsustainable. And as a result of that, 2 years later, you're part of the 5% of people that have lost weight and not gained it back. And so this is how powerful this stuff is, because like I've done it recently and I feel so much better about the whole of my life. Like it's not even just weight loss, but business, career, relationships. Like once you're operating at this frequency where you feel in a sense of peace, love, gratitude, freedom, and you can literally create this within you, and I want to explain how you can do that in a minute, everything feels effortless because you're not doing anything because you want to feel a certain way, but because you feel a certain way, you're taking action, which is beautiful. So if we now understand that we want to change our frequency, you're probably thinking to yourself, how do I change my frequency? Well, there's actually a number of ways that you can do this. And I think the easiest form to do this, right? And I've been doing 75 hard recently, which is like 2 workouts per day. And don't worry, I'm not gonna say do 2 workouts, but 2 workouts per day, eating clean, no alcohol, reading 10 pages. But the easiest thing that you can do, I think, and this is again where like bodybuilders just are like completely wrong about weight loss, because again, they're saying do the minimum amount of effort to lose weight, but I'm saying change your frequency and weight loss will happen. And it's to exercise daily, okay? And it doesn't mean you have to do like a really hard workout, like you could do a walk some days, but just make the habit of showing up for yourself every single day and raising your heart rate. And that doesn't mean that you have to lift weights every single day either. Like I think a form of exercise that you can really benefit from is zone 2 cardio. So the reason why zone 2 cardio is so good is because it is meditative. So after the 20-minute mark, and zone 2 cardio, by the way, is a form of cardio that allows you to operate where you're doing this cardio when you're able to speak, basically. So like a light jog, maybe some rowing, maybe something on the exercise bike, not too intense, basically. You're not trying to go for like some PB. You're just trying to raise your heart rate to a point where you're still exercising, but you're not huffing and puffing, and the aim is to basically just endure as long as possible. But what happens after the 20-minute marks? The first 20 minutes, your body is actually just getting used to doing the exercise. Your body's getting used to moving from a non-moving state. But after 20 minutes, because it's such a repetitive movement, so if you think about jogging, you're kind of moving in the same way, something on the exercise bike, you're moving in the same way. What happens after the 20-minute mark, because you're not overly exerting yourself, you actually go into this kind of meditative trance where you're just watching your thoughts go by and you're just like listening to your thoughts, but you're not able to hold on to these thoughts. And that's the key thing, right? Because you're creating separation between thought and self. And so you're stopping identifying with the thoughts that you're having. And so later on in the day, right, because you've had this period of time where you're just watching your thoughts go by and you're basically not attaching yourself to them and not going deep into them and then feeling the emotions that are associated with them. Later on in the day, when you're getting into these negative thought patterns that are causing you to feel negative emotions, that give off this negative electromagnetic frequency, well, then you can actually rewire your brain because you've already had this period where you're watching your thoughts and you're not getting so obsessed by them. And I think it's super powerful because exercise is one of those things where you just got to get up and do it. And some of the other ones, they might seem a little bit more foreign, depending on how versed you are in this kind of field. But exercise daily, get up first thing in the morning, raise your vibrational state, raise your frequency, and do zone 2 cardio, because you're going to separate your thoughts and yourself. And as a result of separating your thoughts and yourself, later on in the day, when you're having these negative thoughts and these negative emotions, you become more aware of them and you can rewire them so that you can displace those thoughts and emotions with more positive things of gratitude, self-love, freedom, and self-care. And then as a result of that, you're going to basically continually keep yourself in a positive frequency. And the thing is, with this electromagnetic frequency, it's something that you don't just click your fingers and you do the work and it's done for life. It's something that you have to maintain, right? You have to maintain being a high electromagnetic frequency to get the benefits from it. You can't just like do it for a week and then stop. So it's like something that you just keep doing over and over again. But obviously the more that you do it, the more likely it's gonna become normal, because neurons that are wired together fire together, right? So all throughout your life, you've been thinking these negative thoughts because, again, like negative emotions and negative emotional experiences are more easily remembered. And there's literally studies that give people negative photos and positive photos, and they do brain scans on them, right? And the people with the negative photos, or the people that are shown negative photos, have more amygdala activation in their brain as a result of the negative photos than the positive photos, and it shows that negative experiences are remembered way better. So throughout our life, we have these negative experiences, they cause negative thoughts, they cause negative emotions, and so we are wired to remember them. And so it does have to take conscious effort to be able to put ourselves into this elevated emotional state. But as a result of that, we're going to feel better and we're going to lose more weight and it's going to feel effortless, so it's worth it. So zone 2 cardio is one of them. The other one is meditation. Now, you might say to yourself, or you might say to me, oh, like I haven't tried meditating, but my thoughts go everywhere and then I just have to stop. The point of meditation is for your thoughts to go everywhere. So that is the idea, okay? And like, the thing is with meditation, it's actually really powerful because it's kind of like going to the gym. It doesn't just like stop. You can always improve, but just to start, right? What you want to do is you're going to be breathing. So you're going to have one breath, another breath, another breath, another breath, and you're going to be following this breath. So maybe breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, and just try to become aware of the breath going through your nose, and just focus on that point and keep your focus on that. Now, at some point, you're going to have a thought, and the thought is going to take you away from the focus of the breath. Now, you might even have another thought. You might have another thought. You might even have another thought. And then at that point, you might be like, shit, like, I need to be focusing on the breath. At that point, you're going to bring yourself back to the breath and you're going to keep doing it over and over again. Now, the moment that you've gone from, because this is unconscious, right? Because you haven't realized you're there yet. The moment that you take yourself back from unconscious to conscious is basically a win, right? Because what you've done there, which is super sick, is you've become conscious of your unconscious thinking pattern. Now, as you do this more and more, with practice, obviously, you become better at catching yourself. And it means that throughout the day, you're gonna be having thoughts. And so you might look in the mirror, and I found this with me. I used to look in the mirror and look at the faults that I have. Because I lost a lot of weight, I have stretch marks on my body, or I have a lot of generally I have more abdominal fat because I'm an Asian and we store fat in that place. And I used to look at hair on my body and just think, oh, why do I have to have it? But obviously that's not gonna put me in a positively vibrational state and put me in positive frequency, because these are negative emotions. And that's obviously gonna impact my behavior downstream. So because I've been meditating, because I've become aware, because I've been doing the zone 2 cardio, I was able to catch myself having those thoughts. And as a result of that, I was able to change and displace those thought patterns into more positive ones. So now I look in the mirror and I'm like, fuck yeah, you look handsome. Or fuck yeah, you're looking good. And I'm always trying to make it more positive, because as a result of that, I practicing self-love, self-appreciation, gratitude for my body. And those are the most elevated emotional states that you can have. And then your behavior just becomes downstream better than that, because you're operating at a better frequency. Another thing that you can do is gratitude. Now, the emotional gratitude journaling. So you can get a book in the morning, write down what you're grateful for, maybe 3-4 things, maybe more. And the reason why this is super powerful is because gratitude, if you think about it, is you're basically saying thank you for receiving something. And so it's a very powerful message that you're sending into the universe by having these thoughts, right? Sending it to your body as well. Because if you're saying, I'm grateful for my body, I'm grateful for my health, I'm grateful for my legs. I remember I used to go for a run in the morning every single day when I was in the UK. Every single day I'd go out at 4 a.m. in the morning and I'd come back. And one of the things that I used to write was that I'm grateful for my legs, which is super powerful, right? Because I'm going for a run, I'm coming back, and I'm saying I'm grateful for my legs. You bet I'm gonna be way more motivated to keep going for that run, because I wanna make the most out of the legs that I've had, right? And so even a simple thing like that can help you elevate your emotions, operate at a more positive frequency. And as a result of operating at a more positive frequency, your behavior changes. And because your behavior changes, you end up losing weight and achieving not only your dream body, but literally any dream that you want. Look, I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you for watching. Remember, you are the person that you want to be. Peace.